Have you ever felt like your life was a carefully rehearsed play, where every step, every word, every emotion was predictable? My name is Rose, and for 50 years, I played my part flawlessly until a stranger with a sketchpad and a smile showed me what it meant to live on the edge of chaos and desire. This is not just a story, it's a confession, and it begins on a quiet summer afternoon, with a garden, a fence, and a choice that changed everything. After the garbled noises left Mimith, he must have realized he was doing something right because he began to speed up. I held his head tenderly and quickly pulled him closer to the package. His touch was firm but gentle, and with each caress electricity flowed from that spot to my hair. I began to squeeze the pillow as if I was getting even, and as the sensation grew stronger, it finally erupted into a loud scream. I was shaking and hurried to get Yuppi's water poured out of the box. Hey, you should definitely hear this story. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rose, and I guess you could say that life has technically been the world of excitement I once dreamed of at 50. I'm sure it will be the best story you've ever heard. I've been married for years, but it is more like a meticulously planned dance than a passionate embrace. Don't get me wrong, I love my husband Richard's band, but our daily routine has become so repetitive that sometimes it feels like I'm living the same day over and over again. We live in a loveless small neighborhood where everyone says he to each other, and the biggest drama is which lawn gets the award for best kept yard. Richard is a good man who is calm and reliable, but seems to have been suckered into routine. This is a far cry from the adventure life I once imagined for myself. A new family, the Thompsons, had moved in next door about a year ago. Lively and always full of energy, their son Lucas turned 18 this summer, and I couldn't help but notice how tall, handsome, and charming he was. He smiled constantly when we met, and his eyes had a spark of curiosity that I at first dismissed, wondering how a child could maybe recognizing someone like me. But then that afternoon came, and I was enjoying a nice tea in the garden as I watched the bees flying among my flowers. Richard was in his study as always, lost in his books, and the sun was warm like a soft blanket. I didn't notice Lucas until he was standing by the fence, smiling half-sided, and said something about how beautiful the garden looked. Before I knew it, we were talking about flowers, his aspirations to become an artist, and how much he hated math. His words were direct, but the way he spoke gave me the impression that he wasn't just being polite, but genuine interest in what I had to say. From that point, and our little conversations the fence became my escape. All the their youth and good looks didn't hurt me. I began to look forward to them more than I wanted to admit, because of the way they made me feel alive and reminded me of a younger version of myself. I thought I had lost him somewhere along the way. Butony night, after Richard had gone to sleep in his recliner, as always, I found myself wandering into the garden again, with Lucas sitting on the seat under the stone wall and a sketchbook in his hand, beckoning me to come closer. And without thinking, I went. That night something changed, and he showed me his sketches, these beautiful raw images that seemed to capture more emotion than I had felt in years. I'm not sure if it was the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world, or if it was sheer thrill of doing something I shouldn't, but something deep inside me awakened a hunger for more, to live for. Feeling now. Don't get me wrong, I can't pretend it didn't happen, but I'm not proud of what happened next. Lucas started looking for reasons to stay on the fence longer. When he knew I would bear out, I started dressing a little fancier, and gradually our bond grew stronger. At first it was just glances that lasted a little too long, followed by lingering touches. I thought I had control of the situation, but life has a funny way to prove otherwise. One warm Sunday, when everything started to fall apart, I made a batch of lemon tarts using a secret recipe whispered in the stillness of the night, and every time I looked into his eyes I felt like I was standing on the edge of the precipice, teetering between the excitement and fear my grandmother used to swear by, and I felt that taking some to the Thompsons would be a kind gesture. I should have been more aware that a universe away from my own, Richard had taken to the golf course like clockwork. On Sundays I carefully carried the platy and balanced it while ringing the doorbell, and got no answer. But the front door was shaking slightly and swaying gently in the wind. I said, "Hello? Is anyone home?" but still nothing. The house was eerily quiet, like I was holding my breath. I was curious but hesitant, so I said to leave the plate on the counter and leave. But my feet moved on their own and took me further into the house before I noticed Lucas in the living room, sprawled on the couch with a laptop on the coffee table in front of him playing with his broom. I was shocked by what I saw. I hesitated for a moment looking at him, but I didn't back down. I had never seen anyone do this before, and it stirred strange feelings in me. At first he didn't hear me. When he finally noticed me, he was startled and said, Rose's voice was a mix of surprise and something else, something gunshire. I picked up the plate, a cord lifting suddenly out of place. I did this for your family, I said, my voice lighter. Then I felt her face was full of fear. They are not home, but Rose, please don't tell anyone what you saw. I should have said, of course I should have left, but instead I walked over and sat next to her and put the plate on the coffee table. I felt like I was mesmerized after what I had just seen. What happened next felt inevitable, like water finding its way through cracks and stone. At first we talked about everything and nothing to lighten the mood. I told her she could trust me, that it would remain a secret between us and to lighten the mood. We talked about Harriet, the weather, the new calf that had opened downtown. But there was an undercurrent of tension behind it all, a tension that neither of you should touch, but we both felt strongly. At some point the silence felt just as I was about to make a movement towards Leafy spoke. You know, I've never had anything with anyone before, he said. He sat back down. I guess our conversation had worked. He saw me as a safe haven. He looked sad, so I sat down next to him. I wanted to show him affection so he wouldn't be sad, but the lump on his broom caught my attention. The words came out of my mouth involuntarily at that moment. Lucas, if you and I can help you. I meant he'll net that my hand was on the lump. My touch lasted longer than it should have, and when I looked up and met his eyes, they were still staring at me, and I realized that we were standing at the crack of something that we couldn't escape from. I can't remember who moved first. It could have been him or me, but suddenly we're too close, and his hand brushed my cheek tentatively but deliberately, and he froze my pounding heart. Rose whispered softly, almost reverently, and then the dam broke. The kiss was tentative at first, testing the waters, but when I didn't pull away it deepened and became more urgent and all-consuming, and my body ignored my body. I was lost in the heat of the moment, and he stopped considering what to do. I was thinking about him and how his touch gave me a sense of life I hadn't had in years, and I knew deep down that he was thinking the same thing. Then everything changed and I couldn't take my eyes off him. Every feature, including the sharp line of his jaw and the way his lips parted slightly as half accused on the shadows playing on his cheekbones, imprinted itself on my mind like a masterpiece I couldn't help but admire. I shifted in my seat and will show him how. But first I will go ahead and lock the door. When he came to me, my cheeks were flushed and I answered him. He rushed over excitedly and closed the door. Rose, my name rolling off his tongue like a secret, meant only for me. I calmed him by running my fingers over his lips. I took his arm and sat him in front of me. I opened the package slowly and gave him the command. His touch was warm, but electric, and my pulse quickened as his fingers traced small, empty patterns on the package. You are beautiful, he whispered. I know he said those words to him because I felt embarrassed. Honestly, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was relax. I held his head tenderly and I quickly pulled him closer to the package's touch was firm but gentle, and after garbled sounds came out of my mouth. He must have realized he was doing something right because he started to speed up. I started squeezing the pillow as if I was getting even, and the intensity of this feeling grew until it culminated in a loud scream. Lucas quickly got up because he was shaking and water was spilling out of the package, so he laid down on the couch randomly and grabbed the broom and put it in the middle of the package. He tried some slow amateur moves, but he didn't have time for that. I was hoping for more. I touched him slowly and told him to stop after gaining complete control, and I did all the back and forth moves like I was swinging, and we were having a great time. Our temperatures were rising. The house started to get very hot. It took a long time for someone who had experienced for the first time I couldn't help but think about that at that moment, but I could feel that we were slowly coming to our end because his reactions had suddenly become more hesitant. He pulled the broom out of the package immediately, turned to him, and we were level with the broom. He held the end of the broom with his hand and trying to get the contents out. His attempt failed. I agreed with him because if that was what happened in my first experience, I immediately took action when it passed my palate and went further. My stomach felt queasy. Booty continued so as not to ruin everything. I held on as long as I could. In the end, my eyes turned red with salivate was flowing out of my mouth as if I was shaving a seizure. Luckily that was enough. There was a huge vibration and an explosion. My face couldn't even be seen because of the protein liquid. Now it was all over. Everyone was happy. He sat down on the bench, tired. I was out of breath. I wiped my face with a napkin on the coffee table. How did it come about? He asked as Hugh and he got up and left. He just looked at me with a unique smile on his face. Will I see you again? He asked. We both knew more or less the answer to that. Yes. You'll see, I said and left the house.